Tender Strands by Martin Dempsey. Chapter 27. Shedding. Before Smith lay the suspect Arthur Cavell, his chest rising and falling in time with the mechanized inhalation and exhalation of the life support machine, a loose restraint strap around his waist to hold him in place in the event of an earthquake, explosion, or simply being jostled. He had been given a private room with well-upholstered visitors' chairs, a pine bedside cabinet with a vase of 8 bright yellow chrysanthemums, their large heads leaning over the bed and towards Cavell slightly, and a large flat-screen TV, the controller going unused and unrequested on top of it. Even the sheets were silk. When Smith had heard this was where Arthur Cavell was being treated, he was surprised and inquired further. Apparently, Cavell was even more affluent than being the single fully paid up owner of a taxi garage would suggest. Smith had learned Cavell was the beneficiary of a large inheritance, part of which had gone into buying the best private healthcare coverage available to the general public. The coverage provided for someone to come in and bathe his unanimated body, to turn him over to preserve and prevent bed sores, to play him classical music, and maybe even to pity him. Smith, when he'd heard the exorbitant cost of this level of care, looked into the coverage and did some rough calculations. Even if this was an issue with the insurance, if they managed to slip out of paying by finding a contractual loophole about getting poisoned or something that broke the laws of physics and biology, for example, his savings alone would still be enough to cover another 35 whole years of treatment before the money would run out, and they'd either go looking for relatives or get a court order to pull the plug. Smith crossed over to the bedside table and opened its single drawer. Inside was a copy of the Bible. Smith reached inside his coat pocket and withdrew a well-used exercise book with Dream Journal written on it, and placed it over the Bible, then slid both volumes over to the side to make room for a second book, a brand new unopened copy of Baron Malencroft's narrative of his marvellous tales and adventures, which he placed down carefully. Smith slid the drawer shut and crossed the room to sit for a while to pay his regrets. A nurse came in, her heels clacking against the tiled floor, and shot Smith a warm yet non-intrusive smile. Possibly she assumed he was the patient's friend. "Would you like me to change the album?" she said, after she'd made a note of Cavell's vitals. "It's been playing for a couple of hours now." "I don't mind, thank you. It's okay." The theory goes that music helps provide stimulus, and it's believed to help the brain recover. We're usually asked to change the music 3 or 4 times a day. "Oh, okay. If you like, I wasn't really listening." The sympathetic expression on her face suggested to Cavell she'd mistaken his genuine lack of interest for preoccupation at Cavell's flight. There's good evidence to suggest that they are in there somewhere," she said, and gently touched his shoulder. "They're not dead. They're dreaming." Cavell was surrounded by darkness, the absolute darkness of an airtight, unlit room. Yet he could feel cool, clean air entering his lungs. He was laying down. That he could feel. Under his fingertips he could feel the smooth, cool, almost rubbery texture of silk. He could feel a light pressure of more silk, maybe over the top of him, and something else across his waist. Then in the darkness, in the distance, he heard a clacking sound approaching, and his blood felt cold in his veins. Out of the blackness above him, suspended by a shimmering thread as thick as one of his legs, it dropped slowly, spooling out its line until it was suspended directly above him. It had changed. Before, the tufts of hair around its eyes were snowy white. Now they were peacock blue and turquoise, and the forward-facing pair of eyes slanted upwards and had thick, kiss-curl lashes. Its voice had changed too. Where before it was a shrill piping that made his inner ear vibrate and gums itch, now it sounded breathy, lisping, and coy. "Hello, Arthur." Cavell tried to pull back, but his body wouldn't obey his orders. It's lovely to see you again. It dropped even closer. Cavil had forgotten just how huge it was. It dropped only a couple of fingers' width from his face. Its huge, black, perfectly round eyes darkly reflecting his own within them. They were terrified, but far worse. There was an element of resignation in them. You did so well, Arthur. My offspring are demanding. Most don't ever make it past infancy, but you raised them well. I was watching. You made me so proud, Arthur. Thoughts and ideas kept separate by panic, denial, and desperation started to click together in his head. And, in the second of his agnoresis, a new fear rose. Would it be angry about the ones that had gotten, that didn't make it? No, not at all. It's why I'm always careful to have just more than one or two. That way, it's the strongest to survive and make their way back to me. And when we become one again, we can learn from them the best way to be, the best ways to survive, the best ways to thrive. We learned a lot this time, all thanks to you, Arthur. Cowell tried to close his eyes. He tried. He tried to look away. He tried so hard. You did so well. You were resourceful and diligent. As it spoke the last lines, a shrill slowly unfolded and extended outwards. You were so kind. One of the tips of the fangs touched Cavil very lightly on the temple and slid slowly and gently down his cheek, leaving a trail of liquid serotonin behind which joins the tears running down his face. You were such a good father, Arthur. They loved you so much. They never wanted to be apart